In a Venn diagram of one, I talk a lot about how Americans are capable of making the most of opportunities in life if they can only just get a fair shake. Now, getting opportunity does not mean having something just handed to you. But what it does mean is that the rules are fair, standards are consistent, and that in arenas of competition, we can count on those time-tested expectations to be in place. Now, Alexis Sneller spends her time fighting for those expectations, and she fights for opportunity as a member of the Pennsylvania Family Institute. Ms. Sneller is a policy analyst there, where she advocates for the sanctity of life and family. She's using her degree in political science as a teammate at the Institute, where they collectively work together to secure a culture where life, family, and religious freedom flourish. Please welcome Alexis Sneller and her panel to the stage this morning.
Thank you, everyone, for being here today. I am Alexis Sneller with the Pennsylvania Family Institute, and I am joined by some incredible legislators who have been on the forefront of advocating for fairness in women's sports. So without further ado, I'm going to be introducing them, and then we can get into some great conversation. So first, I'm joined by Senator Kristin Phillips Hill. She's been serving York County since 2015 when she was elected to the state legislature. And now she serves as state senator since she was elected in 2018. Senator Phillips Hill has really been on the forefront of this issue. She introduced this legislation in 2021 and has continued to fight for it. Her current iteration of the bill, Senate Bill 9, the Save Women's Sports Act, earlier this year passed the Senate and is now sitting in the House waiting for a vote, which we'll talk about in a bit. But we're so thankful for the way that she's continued to use her platform and her voice to speak up for so many women and girls across the Commonwealth. I'm also joined by Representative Clint Owlett. He has been, again, from the very beginning, a supporter of fairness in women's sports, but just recently has started a new coalition called Dads Defending Daughters, where he's formed dads in the legislature who have daughters competing in sports and starting a new voice, a new aspect, a new approach, and giving so many dads across the Commonwealth a new way to interact with the issue. So we're so thankful for that, and we'll hear more about his coalition. Thank you. And he also serves Tioga County and has since 2018. And finally, I have Representative Barb Gleim, who has served, yes, thank you, who has served Carlisle since 2018 when she was elected. And Representative Barb Gleim was also one of the first to introduce fairness in women's sports legislation in 2021. She was initially introduced the bill with 4 other female athletes in the legislature from across the Commonwealth. And that bill, House Bill 972, passed both the House and Senate, where unfortunately Governor Wolf vetoed it, but that has not slowed down Representative Gleim. I don't think it's possible to slow down Representative Gleim, and she has continued to just be a tireless advocate. So let's hear from our panel. First, I just want to ask you all today how you first heard about this issue. I know it's very familiar to us now, but it wasn't always. It's a bit outlandish. So how did you first hear about it, and what really drives your passion?
Well, Alexis, thank you. I'm so thrilled to be here today with my good friends and fellow champions on this very important issue. And if you had asked me 10 years ago, one day you will serve in the Pennsylvania State Senate, do you think you're going to have to introduce a bill that makes sure that boys cannot be in girls' sports? And I would have looked at you and said, you are absolutely insane. Of course not. It sounds almost dystopian. But here we are. I was a swimmer. When what transpired at the University of Pennsylvania happened, it just hit to my core. You know, young women and girls fought really hard for the opportunity to participate in sport. We know the skills that women acquire through competitive sport. We know how hard they fought for them. And to think that our daughters, our granddaughters, our sisters, biological girls and women will be relegated to being spectators in their own sport was absolutely reprehensible, right? Every girl deserves the opportunity to fairly compete, to get a spot on a roster, to fairly compete, whether it's on a field, in a pool, on a mat, to have that opportunity to fairly compete, to rise up on that medal podium, and to fairly compete for scholarships and academic opportunity. And we know how important those skills are because women take those skills into their families, their communities, their schools, their churches. Some of those women will even take them into public office. And every single woman in the Senate Republican caucus played competitive sports as a young woman. And it really shows. And we know that the vast majority of Fortune 500 women leaders played competitive sports. We fought too hard. And so we really need to preserve those opportunities for fair competition for every biological girl and woman across this Commonwealth.
That's so well said. And like you said, I think 96% of female CEOs played competitive sports, and that sets such an important foundation.
Indeed, indeed.
I'm really interested, Representative Gleim, Representative Owlett.
Go ahead, Barb.
Go next.
Yeah, absolutely.
So as soon as the image came across the news media of Riley Gaines standing next to a man on the podium, I remember there were a group of women just at that moment that stood up on the House floor, and we all met in the back of the House, and Clint met us because he was there at the beginning too, and we all wanted to do something about it. So we worked with the Pennsylvania Family Institute on a strategy while we were developing the policy. And it was really important because just like Senator Kristin Phillips Hill said, there are a lot of women in the House that played sports and were very passionate about making sure that this wasn't going to be a trend. So what we did was, with the 5 women athletes, we made sure that we covered all of the airways. So we had a woman, me in the central Pennsylvania, we had Val Gatos in Pittsburgh, we had Martina White in Philadelphia, we had Steph Borowitz in the north, okay? So that we were covering all the media because that was really important. And it was an all hands on deck. You know, we just pushed it out. And everybody, so then one person wasn't in charge of all of the communications for the whole state. We actually had a strategy. And so that's how we rolled it out. And I just want to say, you know, thank goodness for all of the brave young women athletes who helped us, who came to hearings and testified. You know, we were talking about Lily Williams and Selena Soule, and of course you can't rule out Paula Scanlon and Riley Gaines and all of the other organizations that came, like Moms for Liberty and Independent Women, and all of those organizations got behind us and helped push this issue. And I can say, because it started in 2021, when it was not popular to be pushing back, and we received death threats. People were fax bombing my office. We were being protested in front of my district office. To today, you talk about moving the Overton window. We have done it. And Pennsylvania, there are still a lot more issues going on out there right now. And you know, I just want to call out, there is a young 16-year-old in Wisconsin right now, and I think her name is Ella, who is really fighting to get boys just out of the bathrooms, okay? This is an issue that is hitting home with parents and the younger generation and grandparents, and we still have a lot more work to do, so.
Alexis, this might be the easiest panel to lead because we're so passionate about this, and for a lot of really good reasons. For me specifically, I have a daughter who is very athletic and loves to compete. And when you think about people taking opportunities away from our daughters, like that's going to be a problem for a lot of different people. And for me, I first heard about this at a conference and back in, I think it was 2020, maybe even earlier, but and I think it was one of your guys' conversations, and thinking, you know, this is the next thing. Like, people care a lot about sports, and people work really hard towards this. It's a Saturday morning. Do you know how many people are at some sort of a sporting event this morning with their kids on a Saturday morning? It's a huge amount of people. So this is a big deal, and we saw this coming, and we knew this was going to be an issue. And when it first came up to be able to work with the 5 gals in the house and come up with that strategy, I had no problem taking a step back and saying, hey, you 5 can lead on this. It makes sense, but I want to be that next person because we need to have a guy because we have daughters as well, and we want to be engaged on this. And we'll talk a little bit more about the strategy moving forward with dads defending daughters, I'm sure, but there's definitely a place in this fight for dads, and we have to step up.
I love that. And, you know, this has been touched on in all of your comments, but especially Senator Phillips Hill, Representative Gleim, you both have been very publicly at the forefront of this over 5+ years. How has the conversation changed? How has culture changed over the past 5 years?
Well, I think that Representative Gleim alluded to it, that, you know, when this first happened in 2021 and, you know, Representative Gleim got that coalition together, put the House bill forward, Senator Judy Ward and I worked together, gathered all the women in the Senate Republican caucus together. We were vilified. We were told we were horrible people. And we really believed that those voices were wrong. Yeah. We felt that the narrative was so off. And we listen to the people that we represent. We are constantly engaged with them. And my conversations with my constituents, what they were saying was dramatically different than what we were hearing reported in the news. And so we knew we were on the right side of this issue. Interesting to note, it polls at about 80-20. 80% of people believe that biological boys do not belong in girls' sports. It's common sense. We all know it. And I think one of the most shocking things to me was when we first gathered to hold a rally in the rotunda. I will never forget, a woman came into my office and she said, she extended her hand and she said, "Hi, I'm a radical lesbian feminist." And I just said, "Hi, I'm Kristin. It's really nice to meet you. Thank you for being here today." You know, and that old adage that your enemy today could be your ally tomorrow, it is really a very large and diverse coalition of people who have supported this. And I think as it has evolved and continued, common sense is really beginning to prevail. And we've seen champions. Representative Gleim and I were so fortunate to be in the White House when the president signed the executive order to protect girls and women's sports. That really sent a loud message. And I think that people are coming around. We're seeing the International Olympic Committee having some common sense interjected into what they're doing. As a swimmer, FINA, which is the international governing body of swimming, has said, wait a minute, we may have gone down the wrong path on this. And so we're beginning to see that happen. Executive orders, they're phenomenal. It's wonderful. But executive orders only last as long as that person is in office. So if that person doesn't get reelected or someone new comes in, that executive order could be gone with another swipe of a pen. That's why what we're doing legislatively is so very important. And Clint, I will say this, thank you. We need everybody on board. We need everybody fighting together for this. Dads have important voices. They need to be loud in support of their daughters as well. I have Representative Joe Diorsi back home in my district. I know he's been a great partner of yours.
Great supporter.
We thank you. We need the dads engaged, helping all of us.
Do you want to jump in there, Barb?
Well, I'll just say that over the last 6 years, you've also seen states that already passed the Women in Sports bill being sued. And that's why we're probably going to talk a little bit about the Supreme Court of the United States going to be looking at a case that involves West Virginia and I believe is it Utah. And we are waiting to hear how they're going to be ruling on that. But that ruling is just going to say that the states have the right to make their own choices on this particular issue. But I want to mention one other thing that because once you do something like this, there's so many organizations that come out either in support or against, but school boards across our state are so important, and they can actually introduce their own policies for their own schools on this. And so I actually ended up going down some of those bunny holes with some of the schools who did not want to have boys participating in girls' sports. And we were able to come up with policies for them and encourage them to protect their girls in sports and in their private spaces and, frankly, protect their health. I do believe also that the Olympics in Paris really made a huge impact on this issue when you're seeing a dude boxer, punching a woman boxer, and the whole world is sitting there watching this boxing match and saying to themselves, this is just not right. So I'll just throw that out there. And
I think the odd thing about this is, we feel like, and we know what we're doing is right. Like, this is the right thing to do. It's very easy to see that our constituents support it. 80+% of folks in Pennsylvania support this. But yet the problem is, on the other side, we're called extremists, which is odd because, you're calling Governor Shapiro called anybody that's working on this extreme. And that just seemed weird because I don't feel extreme on this. I don't think any of you feel extreme working at this. But, as a dad, looking for ways to support our daughters, like it's what we do. We know how to do that in a lot of avenues of life. If somebody's taking something from them, like we know how to help that situation when they're little and how to jump in as a dad. And but then when they get older, it does feel odd in this situation as to how do you fight for your daughter? Like, what's the right way to do that? And I think there's a lot of dads that have just kind of been, caught flat-footed and just like, I don't know, like this is an odd situation. I don't know really how to handle it. But listen, like we have to, I'll say, cowboy up a little bit and get out there and help our daughters and be on the forefront. They don't need to be fighting this by themselves. And when you start to hear the stories of some, like Lily's story of, part of her team changing in a porta potty. Let me just say that one more time. They felt like they needed to change for a track meet in a porta john. Is that really where we're at? That's what we're going to have our daughters do? Where are the dads? Where are, all of the men standing up and saying, this is wrong. Like, this should not happen. They should be able to change in their locker room and feel comfortable doing that and be able to compete for championships and medals that they've worked their tails off for I don't know, 10 or 15 years. Mm-hmm. And that's okay. So it's okay, dads, to stand up and say, this is wrong and I'm going to support my daughter. And actually do that. Don't let them carry this by themselves. Dads need to stand up. It's our job.
Alexis, we worked really hard to get Representative Gleim's bill onto the governor's desk to then have it vetoed. So this session, the Senate said, we're going to push our bill forward. So we passed Senate Bill 9 out of the Senate on my mother's birthday, May 6th, 2025, right? I will not forget that. And it passed 32-17. We had 5 Democrats who joined us, which I think
clap for
really
that.
speaks.
That's right. That's good.
But it speaks to the evolution of where this issue was and where this issue is going. And I think those 5 Democrats innately understood that this is just a common sense issue, that the vast majority of Pennsylvanians and Americans believe that we need to preserve and protect fairness in women's sports. We passed it over to the House. May 6, 2025, we're going on 1 year. And maybe Barb can explain the game of political hot potato that the House Democrats have been playing with this bill. In large part, I believe, because it protects the governor from having to make a decision that he doesn't want to make.
Right. We have the votes in the House to pass Senate Bill 9, but they won't let it out of committee. Or at least at the time, it went to the Education Committee, and there's a rule that says if a bill sits in committee for 15 consecutive session days, that you can file a discharge resolution. And so we waited for the 15 days. We had another strategy, and we discharged the bill. And instead of bringing it up for a vote, they re-referred it to another committee so they wouldn't have to vote on it. So then we waited another 15 days, and we just kept making sure that we were right on that, timeline, and we just kept doing discharge resolutions. Well, then I thought, well, let's put another bill into the mix. And then we would just swirl them, So then we did a discharge for House Bill 158, which was my bill. And so then they had 15 days for Senate Bill 9, 15 days for mine. And then that's when the dads came in and they filed their bill. And we are on a timeline here. So if we don't get a vote, we're just going to keep discharging it. Because what it does is it keeps it in the news, it keeps it relevant, it puts pressure on the House Democrats, and it shows the political hot potato and how badly the governor doesn't want this on his desk. And we just had another colleague of ours, Kate Klunk, who did a maneuver called up in new business to bring up Senate Bill 9, because at the time it was in Judiciary, because it just keeps being flowed around. And they got up, they decided they just didn't want to hear it, and they got up and left. I'm not even sure they adjourned. So these are the type of things that we can do on this issue to keep it flowing and keep working on it, and just expose the fact that they are intentionally not wanting to vote on it. And it's an 80-20 issue, just like she said. It makes absolutely no sense.
And there's no pride amongst any of us. Whichever one of those bills lands on the governor's desk, we're all happy. We're thrilled. It doesn't have to be mine. It doesn't have to be Barb's. It doesn't have to be Clint's. It can be any one of ours. I think we'll all take that as a huge win, whichever bill lands on that governor's desk.
And I think all these discharge resolutions really show the power of what you're doing, in that there's so much good that comes from this movement, even if the bill doesn't land there. And of course, you all are fighting as hard as you can and doing everything you can to make sure that one of those bills lands on the governor's desk. But you know what they say, courage begets courage. And like Representative Gleim said earlier, the more that you all are out front, the more it's in the news, the more school boards are encouraged that they can do the right thing, that they can stand up. And with Dads Defending Daughters, the more that we have different people standing up for this, the more dads across the Commonwealth are encouraged to say, maybe I should stand up. And that's something that I've heard constantly from different women and girls that I've met with have said, why do I have to be the one to do this? I want to play soccer this year. I want to swim. I don't want to have to argue at school boards. I don't want to have to get all of these hate DMs. I don't want to have to do these things. Where are the adults who are being adults? And so I think just the fact that each one of you have stood up and said, I will stand up for you, I will be a voice for you, has been so powerful, and there's been so much good. So I hope that when people hear it's been 5 years we've been pushing this bill, that there have been so many little good wins and victories that have come that are even non-legislative. So I just want to hear a little bit more about the Dads Defending Daughters and what that's meant. I was there at the kickoff event, and it was so special to see all these girls and their dads there. And I think that's just such a powerful, powerful movement.
There's a real special relationship between a dad and their daughter, right? We all know that. And so for dads to be able to step up at that press conference and be there with their daughters and to really move this forward from our perspective to be getting off the bench and getting into this political game is what it is right now, is really important. So I think that even just to go back to the discharge piece, like we understand the strategy and what's going on, but just how odd it is, so I think it went to education, then it went to health. Okay, so both of those make sense. Then it went to judiciary. That makes kind of, okay, you can understand there. Then it went to children and youth, and that's where it sits right now. But where does it go from there? Does it go to Fish and Game? Does it go to we don't know, there's part of this
sport,
but it's a sport. But I think it just shows the stupidity of this whole process of just the real aggressive nature to avoid this. There is no part of them that wants to do this. So much so that the next move is gonna be really odd as to where it goes. But we're not the ones that are on the wrong side of this. We know that the 80-20 issues are what we should be working at here in Pennsylvania right now. We have a divided legislature. We get that. We understand that. There's real, things that happen because of that and things that don't happen because of that. But if there's 80-20 issues, those are exactly what we should be working at here in Pennsylvania. And this one, I believe, is more than an 80-20 issue. People just support their kids and they support their daughters. And dads are right there now. And there's a place for us in this fight. It may have felt awkward at the beginning, but now, listen, we have teenagers, right? We do awkward conversations every day. It's okay. So jump in, get involved, get involved with your kids' lives and show them that you're there to support them in a very practical way with being vocal about this issue.
Well, and this issue is something that has gone not just from families and dads, but all the way up to the Supreme Court, where just this year their cases were argued. We're expecting a decision in June where there were different states who had their Fairness in Women's Sports Act challenge. It's made its way all the way to the Supreme Court. Several of you were there at the arguments. Can you talk a little bit about what those rallies were like, what momentum we hope to come out of a Supreme Court decision? We're hoping that it's favorable. The arguments went well, but could you all speak to that a bit more?
Yeah, absolutely. And we saw you down there, Representative Gleim and myself, Senator Judy Ward. We were down there on January 13th. It was a beautiful day in Washington, D.C. And the momentum, you could feel it. There were so many young female athletes with their parents, their teammates. There were advocates from all over the country. Some of those young women are just so incredibly brave, standing up and saying, we are not going to compete in an unfair environment. And they have actually stepped back and said, we won't go into the arena. Taking a real hit, right? And so I felt really invigorated. I felt like this is why this is so important. This is why I need to come back to Pennsylvania. This is why I need to continue to fight for this. And please understand, we are going to be so grateful if the Supreme Court upholds that states have the ability to act in this arena. However, that doesn't make it okay here in Pennsylvania. It still means that we need to pass one of our pieces of legislation to permanently codify those protections for our daughters, for our granddaughters, and for every biological girl and woman in this Commonwealth. So we're excited. We hope that those folks in West Virginia and I believe Idaho have their laws upheld. But we need a law right here in Pennsylvania, and that's what we need to join together and fight for.
And the beauty of where we're at right now is we've been talking about this and leading on this for 5 years now. So, we're really hopeful, like the good senator said, and if we get a positive ruling there, and we've been talking about it, like we have the bill, it's been worked through the process, it's really close to being, put into law here in Pennsylvania. So we want this to be relevant, and we appreciate you talking about it here today so that we can, be in the right place at the right time for a good decision from the Supreme Court, that would be meaning a lot for us here in Pennsylvania.
Yeah. Well, and I know we're running short on time, but I just want to leave everyone with what we hope for the future. What are your hopes for this issue going forward that we can learn and glean from it, besides the governor having to vote on it or sign on it?
Well, I think that our hope is that we are able to protect our daughters in sports, and that it branches out even from there. I think in the future, this type of legislation will have a very big impact on other issues out there. I believe personally that there was a whole movement on the far left side to affect our culture in America. And I think what they didn't think about was women in sports catching it up, their momentum going in that direction. And so this fight for the last 6 years has not just been for women in sports, but it's been literally for the culture and the values in the United States that we cannot allow them to take away from us or win on these type of issues. And that's what motivates me. That's what motivates, me going to these events. And we also know for our own state, I believe also it's about money. And money is the root of all evil, and it might affect, the governor's chances here. So, coming back down to the state level, just knowing that Supreme Court is going to vote in favor of states to say, yes, if this goes through, it is codified. And we'll have that to bounce off of as the year goes on.
Well, I'm so thankful for you all. We could continue talking about this for quite a while, but all of your leadership has just been invaluable, and I hope that everyone takes this as encouragement to move forward, to vote, to talk to your school boards, talk to your legislators, thank them if they're doing the right thing, encourage them to do the right thing if they're not, and really, we couldn't do this without all Pennsylvanians who are so passionate about this to get involved themselves. So thank you to all of the legislators, and thank you for being here today.